Jesus is called a teacher more often than by any other name in the Gospel. Master, Rabboni, teacher. What does he teach? Does he teach us rules and regulations and ways of keeping all the commandments of the law? Above all, Jesus is a teacher of contemplation. This is his great importance, and this is what we often miss when we think or read about Jesus. Why do I say that? Because if you look at the Gospel and what Jesus tells us about prayer in particular, you see very clearly he's teaching us contemplation. Let's take, for example, his words in the Sermon on the Mount in chapters 5, 6 and 7 of St. Matthew's Gospel. First of all, he warns us against external religion, because external religion can simply feed the ego. So he says, don't stand on the street corners trying to attract people's attention and feed your fame or your reputation or the way other people see you. But he says, when you pray, go into your inner room and pray to your Heavenly Father who is in that secret place. The word secret means mystery, a mysterious place. And what we learn from meditation is that we are a mystery to ourselves. God is a mystery, but the depths of our own being open us to that mystery of self, which opens up into the mystery of God. So the first element of his teaching is interiority. Prayer is about interiority. And then he says, when you pray, do not go babbling on like the heathen who think that the more they say, the more likely they are to be heard. This is a very important understanding of prayer for the Christians, because we tend to use so many words. We fill up our church services with endless words, endless beautiful prayers perhaps. But in the end, there's no silence. And Jesus very clearly emphasizes the quality of silence in prayer. And he says the reason for this is because your Heavenly Father knows what you need before you ask. So much of our prayer is taken up with petition and intercession, asking God to do this, to do that. But if God knows what we need before we ask, surely that changes the way we do our petitions and intercessions. We don't have to try and get God's attention. We don't have to get God to change his mind. We don't have to try to get God to intervene on my personal behalf. God knows what we need before we ask. That gives us tremendous trust to be still, to be in the present moment, not to try and get God's attention, but to realize that it is we who have to learn to pay attention, that God is paying attention to us already. The next element of Jesus' teaching on prayer is about leaving anxiety and worry behind. This is where he tells us, do not worry about what you are to eat and what you are to drink and what you are to wear. So much of our life we spend buying food and buying clothes. But he says, don't become unduly, he's not saying we shouldn't be concerned about our physical well-being, or that we shouldn't be concerned about the needs of others less well off than ourselves. But he's saying, don't get caught up in the consumer madness where you are simply lusting after the next product or concerned because you haven't got the latest fashion. He's telling us, look at the beauty of the world that you live in, the beauty of the flowers of the field, the birds of the air. And by contemplating the beauty that we are part of in the natural world, we can find ourselves in a much more peaceful place, free from being driven and ravaged by our desires. And then he tells us, be mindful. Set your mind on God's kingdom. That means ultimate reality before everything else. And everything else will come to you in due course. Mindfulness, not jumping from one thought to the other, one action to the other without being aware of what we're doing, without any peaceful or mindful attention or transition. Being mindful is what prayer is about. And finally, he tells us, be in the present moment. Don't worry about tomorrow. Being in the present moment, being mindful, letting go of our worries and fears and anxieties at the time of prayer, moving beyond words into a trusting, loving attention, and finding that place of interiority where our heart is open to the mystery of God within us. That's what Jesus' teaching on prayer is about. How do we put that teaching on contemplation into practice? Meditation is the way that we receive the gift of contemplation. It's the way we enter into that experience of contemplation that we are capable of, each one of us. If you meditate with a child of 6 years old, you realize how simple and how natural meditation is. And so learning to meditate is learning to be. It's learning to be fully alive, to be in touch with yourself, to be in touch with the world around you, and to allow yourself to be open to the mystery of God in which we live and move and have our being every moment of every day.